Rob Williams is the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its Offside Sports vertical. He joins us today, typically Thursdays, so thank you for playing ball with us this week, Mr. Williams. It wasn't too long ago we were having a conversation about Rick Tocchet, and you thought, oh, the market is wholly behind Tocchet. He's got a lot of supporters here. Give me your temperature update on that, and give me your 2 cents on what you think of all these Tocchet to Philly rumors.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the temperature on Rick Tocchet with the fan base, I think he's overall a popular coach, I think, still in the city. That's the sense I get. When they lose, for every game they lose and play boring, I think there is a segment of the fan base that gets louder, saying that they don't like his system, that he plays too boring and can't coach offense, right? I think what we saw with what they were saying, how they're trying to reprogram Elias Pettersson, what does that mean? Like, they've got this amazing offensive star and they're trying to teach him a new way to play. That maybe can feed into that fear that this is just a guy that wants a bunch of Kiefer Sherwoods on his team, and he just wants guys to just skate and play defense and forecheck. I don't feel that way. I think Rick Tocchet's an excellent coach. I think we see, obviously when he speaks to the media, like an excellent communicator. I think that probably translates well to the room. I think he's a guy that can command attention without having to yell, which I think is a really important quality. I think he's a smart hockey man. I mean, I think John Cooper picked him for his staff with Team Canada. I think that's another good sign. I don't think that they can't produce offense in this system. I think that the problem he had was his top offensive stars, didn't play up to their level this season. So with that said, this talk about Philly is the thing that really gets me. I don't understand. Like, again, he played in Philly for 10 years. He was a great flyer. Of all the teams to leave for, and I'm not saying he won't leave Vancouver or won't be tempted to, but why Philly? Like, you really want to go to that team? You want to go to a non-playoff team that might be a non-playoff team for a couple more years? I know they got Michkov. I know they got some talent there, but like, is that the place to go? Like, I mean, for me, like, if you're going to leave Vancouver and you've got, I think his stock is pretty high right now. I mean, go to a contender, go to a team that's like ready to maybe win a Stanley Cup in the next, 2-3 years.
And golf playing, Yaletown hanging out coach. It just doesn't seem like the right town for him, but I wholeheartedly agree.
He's big buddies with Keith Jones.
So no, he's got the avenue to get there. It's just whether or not he would enjoy himself there. People thought Alain Vigneault was a defensive coach, and Alain Vigneault said, "You give me offensive players, I'll show you an offensive coach," and he ultimately got there. Rick Tocchet had, when he got hired, immediately had under his tutelage a 102-point player en route to 39 goals. Over the course of the next 2 seasons, that player dropped to 89 points and now was on a 50-something point pace. Is none of that his fault? Is some of that his fault? How much does he have to own of Elias Pettersson's precipitous drop?
I mean, that's a difficult question to answer. I mean, I think he's tried. It seemed. I think Pettersson's in his own head here. I think that this is. I hang this. Maybe a portion, but I mean, I hang this mostly on Pettersson. I think that there's other factors. The knee tendonitis. I don't think that's like a get out of jail free card, but I think that clearly had an effect on him. It clearly disrupted his summer training, and he came into camp not in tip top shape, ready to go. How do you deal with this Miller PD situation? 3 coaches have tried and failed now. so I don't hang that on Tocchet. So no, I don't hang a lot of Pettersson's struggles on Tocchet. I hang them mostly on Pettersson. But yeah, I do think that comment the other week of like reprogramming his brain did make me wonder, like, okay, is this like, are they trying to get a guy to do something that he's ill suited for? But at the same time, like, okay, explain why he can't take a one-timer on the power play. Like, explain why he can't thread a pass through guys when he's on the power play. Like, that's not a systems thing. Like, he's not, and he's not being asked to dump the puck in and and skate in a straight line on the power play. And he hasn't been very good on the power play this season. So yeah, I don't know that I buy that. I'm not going to hang too much of that on Tocchet, but obviously everything, the coach affects everything. So he has to take some blame on everything.
So, if both of you feel free to quibble here, but column A, players who have regressed this year: Pettersson, Joshua, Besser, Höglander, and Susie before he was traded. Players who have improved this year: Quinn Hughes, which is saying something, or he's stagnant if you want to say
he might be level at worst.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rob, can you abide Hughes being level or better?
I think this is the best year of his career. I think he's even better than last season. If he were healthy all year and the Canucks were a playoff team, if he were healthy all year, the Canucks would be a playoff team, and he'd probably be right there for the Norris. So, yeah.
All right. Suter.
Mm-hmm.
Sherwood. Myers.
Myers is pretty stagnant with last year, I would say.
Okay, well,
but still, he improved from that year, from the previous year.
He's their unsung hero, I'll have you know. Like, somebody smart wrote about that last week.
And did you guys see the analytics from last game? I was
yes.
Please share. Yes, please share.
I don't have him in front of me to rattle him off, but he was
okay.
He looked good on the fancy stats.
Garland,
absolutely.
Forbert, or maybe Forbert is level.
Yeah, I don't think we can make and Garland is it improved this season?
Well,
I'd say so. I mean, he's playing a bigger role too.
He's the exact same pace as last year.
Yeah,
exact same pace.
Okay, so depending on how you slice it, 4 or 5 guys have backslid, 4 or 5 guys have improved.
I would say the guys that backslid have been far more dramatic than the guys that have improved. I mean, Suter's the only marked improvement. Everybody else that has improved is minorly improved.
The big thing is Pettersson. I mean, the season is this, right? Is Pettersson, Miller, and Besser were a shadow of themselves this season. Like, they were nowhere near.
Yeah, the best players were nowhere near. Yeah, and
Thatcher Demko has been out of the lineup nearly the entire year. Lankinen's been very good, but he hasn't been like Vezina caliber good like Demko was last year. That's a huge difference, having those 4 guys.
Yeah, that's this year in isolation, though.
Mm-hmm.
When you do the totality of Tocchet's coaching career in Vancouver, I think you can say Hughes, Besser, Garland, Suter, Sherwood, Bluger, Myers, like, it's a Joshua. It's a long list of guys who I think have become better hockey players under his tutelage.
I know everyone wants them to win every game 6-5 and be this like high flying, entertaining team, but like, they were a tire fire defensively when Rick Tocchet took over, which is not that long ago, right? 2 years ago. He's turned them into a very responsible, very sturdy defensive team. That's not like a bad thing. Like, I think you can do that while also still scoring goals. I don't think it's not one or the other, right? Like, I think this is that's the thing that kind of gets me when people start saying like the system, and then they can't, like, they blame the system for everything, and they sort of can't explain what the system is other than dumping the puck in. Which is not a systems thing. So that to me is what gets me. I think that you've got to play on both sides of the puck. And I'm still buying what Rick Tocchet is selling.
And Rob, that's the important part. And you note, rightfully, this team was absolutely as bad as it comes defensively in terms of identity, detail, responsibility, guys cheating for their own offense towards the end under Boudreau, or for a while there under Boudreau. And that's the important part, because if you have that defensive prowess to fall back on, you're in a lot of hockey games. Secondly, and Blake, you say this all the time. I mean, it is very difficult to coach offense, show guys how to put the puck in the net. A lot of offense comes down to, are you talented?
Right.
And that is not something that one can coach. One can coach where you're supposed to be on the ice in certain situations, how you're supposed to read off the opponent and off the teammate to maximize your defensive coverage and make life as difficult as possible for the opposition to score or get the puck into
the flip side of that coin, though, is, Matt, when you coach the offense out of the player, is that not a problem? Like, Rick Tocchet is getting ballyhooed for a year and a half's worth of work. He's only been here at the end of this season. He will have been here for 2.5 seasons, guys. The first year and a half, not a lot of criticism to be levied. But at the end of this, it's going to be like a 45-55 split of good work, bad work here for Rick Tocchet, because he has to wear the inability to figure out the Miller-Pettersson situation, because ultimately it affected both of them on the ice. Both Miller and Pettersson floundered this season under Rick Tocchet.
Miller did not flounder.
Yes, they did. He was not a good player for the Canucks in the first half of the season.
Miller was 35 points in 40 games as a Vancouver Canucks.
I know.
70-some point pace.
And everybody and their dog would say, how the heck did that number happen? Because he was nowhere to be seen most nights for the Vancouver Canucks. That is not indicative of how that player got.
I think we saw like the old Miller creep back, like defensively, like those
yes, think
passes.
about all those. Yeah,
I think there was a lot of that in the first half. But
so let me go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say. I was going to say that we see this sometimes with coaches where they get like, do we compare the job Rick Tocchet has done this season based on last season, as if that's like any coach could have got that out of the team and that's just who they are last season and that he's screwed it up this year? Or are we judging Rick Tocchet this season with this group based on like what this group has done for like 5 years, which was, imagine if they had this season, imagine if this season and last season were flipped. If they hadn't been in the playoffs and, if they hadn't hosted a playoff game in a decade and they were in a playoff chase, this would be like a really good, feel good season.
That's a really interesting point. It's a really interesting point.
And I would say, and don't get me wrong, because clearly he's not having as good a year as he had last year. And if you want to say he's having a poor year coaching, I would abide that as well. But Rick Tocchet is responsible for JT Miller having the temperament of a 13-year-old, being an overgrown man-child baby who throws a tantrum after he gets benched. Rick Tocchet's responsible for that? Because you may have noticed, Miller seemingly has done that before, right? Like other teams also said, can't have this one.
Well, honestly, that's part of the job. Babysitting is part of the job.
He was head coach / parent.
It is.
On this team, it is.
You have realized that. So you're playing dumb here, Matt. You do know that.
No, well,
you do know.
No, Blake, I do know managing personalities is part of the job. Mm-hmm. But when a guy is so emotionally erratic and impulsive that he flies off the handle as often as this one did, and has shown a history of doing that through several other franchises, at some point, I think you got to throw your arms up and say, well, it's the player, not the coach.
Matt, middle of October, we both stood on a soapbox here before all this came to light and said, Can you believe the leadership that this guy is showing? Can you believe where this guy was and where this guy is now? That was October, Matt.
So we had talked about over the last couple of years that JT Miller was growing up. JT Miller had talked about that himself personally. He mentioned the trade from Tampa was a big eye-opener to him, that he realized, okay, yeah, there's things that matter now that I didn't necessarily realize when I was a young player. Fantastic stuff. It doesn't mean that JT Miller wasn't capable of backsliding himself. So you want to put that on Tocchet?
I'm saying Rick Tocchet got the best out of JT Miller, was able to manage that personality for a bit. It did work, and then it didn't.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough to say when we're not, we don't know all of the conversations that have gone on behind the scenes. But, there was the report about the Canucks going to Miller and Hughes to try to kind of toughen up Petey before the year. I don't know how much truth there was behind that or to what level that may have fractured things. But in hindsight, that seems like a crazy thing to say, hey, JT, why don't you go and whip Elias into shape? Like, that doesn't seem like, that might have been a misfire on the part of the Canucks. And then you look at, the timing of the benching with Miller. Like, I mean, I believe that you should be able to bench top players and everything, but there's no doubt that benching Miller in that situation set things off. Like, that was not pushing the right button at that time. I blame Miller for how he reacted more than I blame the coach for doing it. But ultimately, as a coach, you don't want to bench a player if it's going to affect your team negatively. Now, he doesn't have a crystal ball, but, was he pushing? I wouldn't say that was pushing the right button in that situation. It seemed like that just sort of lit off a fire, right?
I almost feel like going Mike Singletary here. Can't win with him, can't coach. Anyways. Rob, we have arena news all over the arena. We have seatbeat news. We also have imaging news. Noah Strang with an investigative report. Rob, please do tell.
Boots on the ground, Rogers Arena. We had Noah, take a little walk around Rogers Arena just to kind of get a little update. We got the story up on Daily Hive right now. Just give an update on what's the status of the posters? What's the status of the murals and whatnot outside of Rogers Arena? And he was tasked with finding are there any JT Miller things left? There's one. It's on a merch, a little merch booth. So a little mobile merch booth. That's the only thing left of JT Miller right now. He's mostly been replaced with images of Connor Garland. So he kind of joins that core group that gets his, image in giant poster form outside a bunch of the different.
One Jake DeBrusk, right? One Jake DeBrusk.
Gates. Yeah. And I thought that was my favorite. Was there's a Jake DeBrusk in the big mural in the plaza right near the Roger Nielsen statue. It's the same murals, the same images, except you can see in the article Miller's gone and Jake DeBrusk is now in the big mural outside of Rogers.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
A couple of things there. Number one, a giant Connor Garland.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like jumbo shrimp, right? Oxymoronic. Yeah. And that must have been a hell of a debate inside the Daily Hive editorial offices. To come up with that story idea. Rob tells me there was big talk there. Good assignment. And seats. What's up with seats, Rob?
Seats are coming, I think, finally. We've been talking about this for how many years now? There was an email sent out to season ticket members, kind of inviting them to Rogers Arena and, to pick their seat location. They noted in there that this is being done earlier this season. And it says they're doing this because they're beginning the process of replacing the seats at Rogers Arena immediately following the conclusion of the Canucks season. So that's why they're doing it, because they'll have limited access to the Arena Bowl after the year. So I think this is finally it. We've had a few times where they've kind of said, "Oh, it's going to be coming. It's going to be coming. It's going to be coming." I think it's finally going to start happening.
We had some false starts and near misses, but I do think we're getting rid of the awful maroon, dated, aged, in some cases failing seats. And you're number one on that beat, Rob. You and Noah do a fantastic job covering the club.
And to bring this
it's building.
To bring this full circle too, we started talking about coaching. Your Vancouver Grizzlies, or your Grizzlies, have a new coach coming as well. They just fired their coach. So there you go.
They should hire Hubie Brown.
Yes, somewhere.
Thanks, Rob.
I was immediately trying to think of all the Grizzlies coaches I could think of. Like, are they going to bring in Brian Hill? I don't know.
Brian Hill.
Sidney Lowe.
Yeah, Lionel Hollins.
Came here as Stu Jackson.
Who's the first guy? The big tall guy. Herman Munster.
Brian. Another Brian.
Yeah.
Winters.
There you go.
Lionel Hollins came here as head coach of the Phoenix Suns when Nash was playing for that exhibition game they used to hold here that would sell out. And he walks to the media scrum, all the waiting Vancouver media. And he gets asked, Coach, how much are you going to play Steve tonight? And he says, hey, guys, believe you me, I understand why we're here, and I know what these people want. They're here to see the native sun, not the Phoenix Suns.
Pretty good.
It's fantastic. We told the Suns PR director that. She said, oh, amazing. I didn't even feed him that line. He came up with that himself. Thanks, Rob. Until next week.
They're up.
Thanks, guys.